We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present. This episode contains discussion of suicide. If this raises any issues for you, support is available through the links and phone numbers in the show notes.
It's 2009 and clearance diver Paul de Gelder is coming up on his 10th year in the military. He spent close to a decade jumping out of planes, parachuting into war zones, diving into enemy seas, and he's even done a spell peacekeeping in East Timor. But today's dive is simple. He's done it many times before. It's 7 a.m. in Sydney Harbour and Paul's here with his team to test some equipment. The light's low and the water's a little murky, but it's nothing compared to searching for bombs on the hull of a warship in the dead of night. Paul's first in the water. He starts an effortless swim a few metres across the harbour. Swimming on his back with his arms floating by his side, his mind starts to wander. He's been trained to swim with his arms crossed against his body, but he likes to feel the water flowing through his hands. He wonders which position would be better in a shark attack. Arms crossed so they'd protect his vital organs, or by his side, ready to defend himself. A strong bump at the back of his legs snaps him out of the daydream. He turns around expecting to see a log. What he actually sees is a 600-pound bull shark. Its teeth so sharp, he doesn't even feel them pierce his flesh. He only knows it's got a grip of him when it drags him through a pool of his own blood into the murky water. Then it starts to shake. Eventually, it rips his wetsuit and the air released shoots him to the surface. It isn't until he starts to swim to safety that he realises he's lost his right hand. I'm Middleton, and this is Head Game. Today, turning a real-life nightmare into a success story through instinct, determination, and a whole heap of YouTube videos. Paul, welcome to Head Game, first and foremost. A fascinating story. Take me back to when the shark attack happened.
Yeah, mate. You know, people like us, we don't really sit around and do nothing very well. Honestly, I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. It was testing unmanned video and sonar unit for the R&D department of the military. This new equipment they wanted to introduce, but they needed to do human testing first.
Take me back to that. Is it a case that you've got this device that you have to enter the water and put it on the hull of a vessel?
So basically, all we're doing is pretending to be attack swimmers. It was going to be a 3-phase trial. So they had automated video tracking the surface. They had automated sonar tracking under the water. So first phase was attack swimming. Second phase was scuba. Third phase was O2 rebreathers to see if they could detect us without the bubbles and metallic stuff. Didn't quite get to phase 2, unfortunately. So we were in the water right alongside HMAS Gadigal, which they call Garden Islands, the big Navy base in Sydney in the harbour. Worked there my whole career. The Navy's worked there for decades, in the water every day. That's where we do 99% of our training with the warships on the hulls as well. So this isn't anything new, but I'm in the water swimming from point A to point B, doing what we call finning. So you're on the surface on your back, wetsuit fins, just kicking along, la-di-da. So not really an exciting day by any means, but I, once again, have sharks on the brain. And I'm just thinking to myself, look, I know there's been sharks seen in the harbour. The fishermen see them all the time. We don't see them that really. I'd never seen a large dangerous shark in my entire life with my own eyeballs. But they're still on my mind. And because I don't have a real task to do, they're at the front of my mind because I'm just finning. I got nothing to think about, but I'm going, okay, when we train to fin, we swim like that. So we're streamlining. You just kind of glide through the water.
You put your arms across your chest.
Yeah, but I like to have my hands by my side, sort of like feeling the water. I don't know. It's just what I like. And I'm thinking to myself, if I have my hands across my chest and a shark grabs me, then by my body, both my arms are pinned and I won't be able to fight back. If I have my hands down by my side, at least maybe it'll grab one arm and I'll be able to fight it off. And then I turn around to look to make sure I'm going towards the bow of the warship. Shark gets me.
How long have you been in the water for?
Probably 4 or 5 minutes.
So
I've
this
just
is
literally
the beginning of
pulled
everything, right?
I pulled the new guy out of the water because he was in the water for about 30 minutes, my buddy Lockie. Pulled him out, said, jump out, mate, let me take over. I'll give you a rest. And so I jump in and 4 or 5 minutes later, in the water, just swimming along, thinking about sharks, get this big whack in my leg, not thinking too much of it because it didn't really hurt. And I turn around and there's a giant shark's head attached to my body.
Wow! So you hit this thing. You think it's something else, and then you turn around and you're literally face to face with this. What's the first thing you see? Just when you turn around, what's the first thing you see, Paul?
Well, the funny thing is when you haven't seen something ever before in your life, it's hard for your brain to process it. Like I remember flying to South Africa one time from Australia, and you go across like the Antarctic. Just you kind of touch on it. And I looked out the window and I couldn't fathom what I was seeing. Like I thought it might be the Antarctic, but it was white and shiny and it had like what looked like roofs and squiggly lines. My brain couldn't work it out. And that's what happened with the shark. Felt like a couple of seconds to work out what I was actually looking at, because it's just not something that you think you're going to see in your whole life, a giant shark with its teeth embedded into your leg and a big eye just staring at you. Finally, my instincts kicked in and I thought, I've seen The Crocodile Hunter. I've seen Shark Week on Discovery Channel. I'll jab it in the eyeball. But it had my leg and my hand, so I couldn't get it with my right hand. I couldn't reach the eye with my left hand. I tried to push it off, but that didn't do anything. And so the final thing that they mentioned is you punched it in the nose. And so I cock back to punch it in the nose, but then the shark, I guess, decides that I'm edible, starts thrashing me around with its mouth. The pain from the teeth just tearing through my flesh and my muscle of my hand and my leg took every ounce of fight out of me. And I was just a rag doll getting taken underwater and ripped apart. So I didn't think I was going to make it out of the water that day. I just thought I was going to die. The pain was just so inconceivable. To have flesh and muscle torn out of your body is just something that I wouldn't wish on another human being. You just realize how powerless we really are. Like as humans, we're lucky we have this big old brain which can think up tools and that sort of stuff. But when it comes down to the line one-on-one with an animal, we're pretty piss weak, to be honest. And this is the scientists measured the bite in my wetsuit and the teeth marks in my leg, devised that it was a 2.7 to 3.2 meter bull shark. So nearly 10
Pure
foot.
Muscle.
Pure muscle in its environment. And, at that point, I'm probably 84 kilos, wringing wet, pretty fit but lean. And there's nothing you can do. Literally nothing. You're just a victim. And so
what do you start doing? What do you do, Paul? So
I gave up.
You give up. You think, do you think I'm dead? I'm not getting out of the water.
Exactly that. I think, you know what? I'm not going home today. I'm going to die right now. And the funny thing that happened was, I don't think it's like time slows down. I think our minds and our bodies are such incredible tools that everything goes into hyperdrive, that adrenaline or whatever, cortisol or whatever kicks in. And you just think things in the blink of an eye. And I thought to myself, are you ready to die? And I looked back on that shit kid who had been so misdirected, had bullied his whole life and all the horrible things that I'd done, to everything that I'd achieved and my sense of purpose and value and service to what I'd achieved in the army and then even to a greater extent in the Navy. And I thought, you know what, I've lived 10 lives in these 31 years. I've done more than I probably even deserve. If I'm going to die now, I'm ready to go. I have no regrets. I've made up for everything. And I just let go. And I was waiting for death in those instances, the shark's teeth met in the middle of my leg as it's thrashing me, ripped out my hamstring, ripped off my hand, and it starts to thrash and swim away. My wetsuit makes me buoyant, so I pop to the surface and take a big gasp of air, realize I'm not dead, and just think, I got to get out of here before this shark comes back. There's another one in the water. I've always thought bull sharks swam in packs. I know nothing. And so I just think I got to get out of here so I don't get bitten again. I can't feel my leg at this point because the sharks ripped out my whole hamstring and 25 centimeters of my sciatic nerve. I start to take a stroke to go back to the boat and my hand is gone. My arm ends at the end of my wetsuit. Medical training kicks in. Okay, I've got to keep that wound above my heart to stem the bleeding. So I start swimming back to the boat, one hand, one leg, can't feel my other leg, through a pool of my own blood. And the guys in the safety boat, my 3 teammates in the little Zod, they're gunning it towards me. And they said the blood was so thick in the water, they could actually taste it in the air when they got close to grab me. I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I was going to survive, but I had one thing that I had to do, get to the boat. So that's all I focused on. I was just thinking any second, this shark is going to come back. I was waiting for the jaws to close down on my other leg and pull me under and die. But it never came. And so I made it to the boat. Guys pulled me out of the water. And just out of relief, really, that I wasn't going to get eaten anymore. I was safe in the boat. I relax, I pass out, and then my buddy Tomo thinks I'm going into cardiac arrest because the wound in my leg is enormous. Like, they did not expect it to be this severe. And so he starts pummeling me in the chest to stimulate my heart to wake me back up, which worked. And I look over and my hand's gone, freshly ripped off by a shark. And I look up and Tomo's beating the shit out of me. And I just think, today sucks. And so everyone's stressed out. The boys are springing into action. I can hear the engine of the boat going, so I know we're going towards a wharf. One of the guys is putting a tourniquet around the wound, above the wound on my leg. I didn't know how to what because we didn't have a safety kit with tourniquets in it. So I find out later they've taken their T-shirts off of their backs, jammed it into the wound, and then strapped it all down with straps from a life jacket. And so I'm trying to crack jokes because I know it's such a military thing for us to do when it starts getting situations. Yeah.
Humour in the face of adversity.
Too serious. Yeah. I don't want everyone to worry. I'll just crack a couple of jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just figured as long as I could see Tomo's face and as long as I could hear his voice, then I wasn't dead. And so that's all I focused on. So they got me back to the wharf, waited for the paramedics to get there, which took about 10 minutes, and then off to St. Vincent's, which was 15 minutes up the street. And so very, very fortunate to have like the great fitness that I had, the training that I had, my mates with their medical training, and then everything came together. One of the guys had to actually stick his hand inside the wound of my leg and pinch closed an artery with his fingers to stop me from bleeding out. Something he said he never, ever wants to do again.
Yeah, but I don't blame him, Paul. I don't blame him. So listen, so you say that you were ready to die, and then when you realise, is there a moment that you realise, actually, I'm not ready to die. I'm still very much alive, and I can get through this with the team. The team are performing. They've got you on the boat. They've now got you to the dock, and they're just about to take you to. Is there a moment in your head where you go, actually, I was ready to die, but now I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to survive.
Not really.
No.
It was just because I didn't want to get my hopes up. I'd already accepted the fact that
you're still ready to die
at
this point.
Yeah, the whole way through it. I didn't want to, but it wasn't. I wasn't really fighting. It's just the fact that I wasn't dead, and so I figure if I'm not dead, then I better just hang on. And so I don't know. It's if you took me physically, mentally, and spiritually back to that person, it might be a different story. But it's interesting you say that because no one has ever asked me that before, and so it's a lot of the story I've told before. I can go into it because I've thought about every aspect of it, but I've never thought about those exact words before. Was there a time where I stopped thinking I wanted to die and started fighting back? And I don't think I really did. It was just the fact that I wasn't dead. Like,
that was enough.
I wasn't fighting. Yeah. Like, I was doing things to help. Like, there wasn't anyone at the bow of the Zod to tourniquet my arm, and we didn't have any tourniquets. So I'm holding my own injured arm with my left hand as tight as I can, trying to stem the bleeding, just like that. So, it's not like I've given up, but I don't want to die, but it's not like, oh, I need to live now. I've got to fight for this. I just figured, if I'm alive, then awesome. Let's just try and stay alive. And if I die, then
I'm not going to know about it.
There's not much I can do about that. Yeah. But, I nearly died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital as well, because I'd lost so much blood. I couldn't physically make my chest go up and down. I didn't have the energy to breathe. And so I kind of whispered it to the paramedics, and they took me through like basically a Lamaze class, like a pregnancy breathing class in the ambulance, just slow, shallow breathing. And then when you get the energy, suck it in as big as you can, and then back to the shallow breathing. And that got me through to the hospital, thank God. And, I remember getting wheeled into the hospital at a rapid rate of knots, and the surgeon running alongside the bed. And I saw him and I said, "Doc, look, I've just started surfing. If you save my leg, I'll buy you a case of beer." It's kind of like it's the military trade-off for everything.
Did he save your leg?
I had it for a week. So
did you get him a crate of beer? No,
I got him a 6-pack.
Is that your last memory until you pass out and then wake up? Obviously, I would only imagine a bit of pain and a bit of shock, a lot of pain and a lot of shock. So was that your last memory, talking to the doc, and then what happens thereafter?
Yeah, I just remember like trying to bribe him with a case of beer to save my leg. Like it's your mate helping you move house. And I remember waking up at one point and seeing that my foot was still there. I still had all the tubes. I could see like bubble wrap around my body. Apparently my body had been swelling up and going down. My temperature was all over the place. But I remember seeing my foot was there, and I was stoked on that, because at this point I didn't even know what was wrong with my leg, because when I got pulled into the boat, I knew enough that if I sat up and looked at the wound and it was horrific, then I would go into shock and I'd probably die. So I just refrained from even looking at it. And so I saw my leg there, I saw my foot, and I was stoked on that, because I figured if I could keep my leg, then maybe I could keep this career that I love so much. Maybe life could go on semi as normal just without a hand. That was my biggest fear. It wasn't about losing the limbs. It was about losing my career and losing all my purpose.
Do you know what? That's a defensive mechanism that you speak about. But you don't want to look at the wound. You don't want to look at the trauma as such, because then you do go into shock. I had the same sort of defense mechanism that I used in the military. I didn't want to see the carnage. When I went into a room and dealt with a situation at hand, I almost blurred my vision. So it was just an object or just something that I was sort of moving through, because the moment you focused or point onto your bite or onto something that you think, oh, good, how am I going to get out of this? Then you do go into shock. So that's a huge survival mechanism that I used when I was in the military as well. So I can hugely relate to that. And also the humour in the face of adversity. That's one of the core values of the Royal Marines. It's like when times are tough, when you're on the bones of your ass and everything around you is collapsing, always have a bit of humour, because it sounds like that got you through massively, from the moment you were on the boat to the moment that you got into the hospital, and to the moment that you woke up and you looked at it and you thought, "Oh, I've got my leg. I'm good."
My whole career was like that. You go out on a defensive exercise for a month and you're digging stage 3 fighting pits with OHP, and you're finally like getting close to the end, and it starts pissing down rain, and your sleeping bags fill it up with water. You're covered in mud, your hands are blistered, and you just look at your mate, and you just wet yourself. You just laugh, because there's nothing else you can do. And it just, the levity of it, that's what gets you through, and it always has. It still does.
Do you take your mindset into your rehab? You know, you're super positive. You're probably going to be in rehab for a couple of years. What goes through your mind, and how does that rehab sort of affect you with your body moving forward, or with your recovery?
Pure terror, bro. Sheer unadulterated fear.
I could imagine.
So after the leg surgery, they couldn't get my pain under control, and they moved me from a quiet corner of the hospital back into Gen Pop. The Navy hospital was under construction, so I'm in a public hospital, and the Navy just has a floor, and so they put me back in. I've just had my leg chopped off. I've just come out of a K-hole because I was on ketamine. I thought I'd been sent to hell. I'm in absolute agony, and for 20 hours, all I could do was roll from side to side in my bed, bawling my eyes out, wishing that I would die. It was horrific. You know, I've never wished this feeling on another human soul, to think that the only option to stop the pain is to die. I wished that the shark had killed me, so I didn't have to go through that 20 hours of pain. But fortunately, you know, after that, they kind of got it under control. And there's only so long you can lay in a hospital bed and just not do anything.
So Paul, just quickly, so for 20 hours, there's a reality check. There's a harsh reality check. It's like, I'm in so much pain. I feel, you know, you've gone from, you know, one of the fittest in your unit. You know, did you run an 83-mile race in the three biggest mountains in Tassie before the incident happened?
Yeah.
So
with no training.
Fit, with no training, that's what I mean. But you've got a super positive mindset. You're super fit. You know, you're the fittest you've ever been. You're on top of the world when it comes to everything, your career, your social life. You've turned that around. And then all of a sudden, you know, you are immobilized in excruciating pain on the other side of the shark attack, rolling. All you can do, you know, I can imagine, because I'm like you, I like to be super active, say super fit. I couldn't imagine having no leg, no arm, being in excruciating pain, and all I can do is roll from left to right. I would be in a ball of tears as well, and I probably wouldn't want to be here. Is that the darkest moment of your life?
Pretty close. I had some dark ones when I was a kid, but I've never wanted to die more in my life. Now, I begged my mum to go and find me a gun so I could kill myself. But, you know, it's very rough.
So these conversations are happening. You're rolling around, you know, in your head, no good to man or beast, you know, and you just want to end it.
Yeah.
And these conversations with your mum, God, she must have been absolutely mortified. And
yeah, she threatened to run the doctors over in her car.
Oh, right. Wow.
If they didn't get the pain under control, she said she was going to hit them with her car. Yeah, they weren't real appreciative of that. So while it was a horrible time and I was terrified, it was actually some moments throughout that time when I was in hospital were kind of nice. Like, I hadn't seen my family in years, most of them. My brothers had been posted away. I hadn't seen my mum in probably close to 5 or 6 years. After I got kicked out of home, I kind of just went on my own. And at this stage, my sister's in the army as well. Parents are split up, so we're all over the country. So it was like family came in, all of my friends from school came in, like everyone from every life that I'd lived, from the rapping to the strip club to the army to the Navy, everyone came in, and there was no waiting room here. So there's 30 or 40 people out the front in the elevator room waiting every day to come and see me. And so that made me feel good. Like, my buddy Hutto would come in, he'd sneak a beer into the room, he'd have a beer, I'd have a shot of morphine, and we'd just laugh at some shit. And there was some good times in there as well, but I can't lay around doing nothing. I decided very early on that if I was going to live, then I needed to continue to have this sense of purpose and fulfillment and value. And there was absolutely no fucking way I was going to go back to being that lost purposeless soul when I was a late
teenager
and in my 20s.
This is what I mean when you give up the fight, and then this is the new fight, right? When do you, surely there's a moment when you, because you've just said it there, right, where you reignite or you get back into the fight. When do you realise, right, I need to just make the most of the situation, I need to get back out there? Was there a moment, or was there a day where you just thought to yourself, right, enough is enough, I am alive, yeah, it's a shit situation, I'm a double amputee, but I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to do everything that I can. I know that I'm psychologically resilient. I know that I'm physically strong, hence why I'm still here. And I'm going to make the most of this situation. Is there a day where you just sort of took that deep breath and thought, right, let's get after it. Let's make the most of this, and let's get back to where we need to be?
Yeah, that was 2 days after I had my leg chopped off.
Wow.
So
there you go.
Yeah. So with the surgery, it was because the shark took my hamstring. And so if they removed above the wound, it would have made me a hip disarticulate amputee, because there would be no residual limb left to put a socket on. And so they didn't want that to happen to me. So what they did was they cut off my foot. They filleted open the back of my leg from the shark bite down to where my ankle was, where they cut off the foot. They took all the bone out of my lower leg, took out my knee joint, and they cut off the end of my femur. And then they folded the calf muscle into where my hamstring used to be. And so I'm laying there 2 days after. I'm like, well, the Chief of Navy's just spoken in front of the media and said, as long as Paul wants a job in the Navy, he'll have one. And so I think, okay, I want my old job back. And so that's it. There's nothing else. It's like, I want my old job back. How do I achieve that? Because I can't fucking lay here thinking about this shit. I need to start taking some semblance of action to start achieving that impossible dream, because it felt impossible. But I'm like, well, I didn't start in the clearance divers, did I? It was a slow process. You don't start by climbing Everest, do you? So, okay, small goals, small challenges. I can't even get out of bed at this point. I've got a bedpan to piss and shit in. I can't go to the toilet, but I see the bar above my bed. And so I grab that, and I remember my old chief, Tony Isles. He broke his back surfing, and he dragged his body along the sand to get back to shore. And I heard him telling a story where he used the bar above his bed to do one-arm chin-ups. And so I saw that bar and I thought, that's it. All right, I don't need to recreate the wheel. I'll just start training like this. And then over a period of days and weeks, my buddies brought in weights. They brought in proteins. They brought in TheraBands so I could tie them off to the bars around my bed. So even before I could stand up, I could at least feel like I was doing something to get moving on to that impossible goal. So that was, 9 weeks.
So you're back in the game. You're back in the fight, basically, psychologically, after 2 days. Yep. That's when you make a decision. You're like, right, that bar up there, this is the start of me getting back on my feet and back in the game. And you mentioned the impossible there, which is, a certain mindset. When someone puts the impossible in front of us, people like us, Paul, that's actually the best thing anyone can do, because they say, this is not possible, you cannot achieve this, and then you're like, move out the way, let me show you. I think that was a huge if someone done it on purpose, I don't know, but that was a huge sort of mental block for you to go.
Impossible is a word people use so that they don't have to get uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But we know that being uncomfortable is actually just an opportunity for you to show yourself what you're actually truly capable of. So
there's no growth in comfort.
No, exactly not. And so 9 weeks in hospital, then home. There was no military rehab hospital, so they tried to send me to an old person's hospital, like an hour out of Sydney. I live at Bondi Beach. I am not going to live at an old person's rehab hospital. So I say, no, thank you. I'm going home. And I just did all of my...
Oh, so you turned down the rehab hospital when you went home?
Yeah, and I did all my own rehab. So fortunately, one of my best friends from childhood moved in with me, and he was a chef. So he acted as my carer, drove me to the army base at the Vic Barracks every day. And so that was it, man. I was in that gym every bloody day that I could actually bring myself to go outside, and I wasn't in agony with my phantom pains or whatever. And I just went in there and tried to learn how to use my body again, improvise, adapt, overcome.
And then 7 months later, is this true? You're back in a dive suit, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. I went back to work after 7 months because they wouldn't let me go to the teams though. So I went back to the bosses. I said, hey, what's the chances? I want to go back to work, and they said no. They said, look, you can't go to the teams anymore because you've got to be deployable for war. And I said, look, I understand that. I'm not trying to push for something that is impossible that, I can't achieve. I want to be useful here. What about the dive school? Let me pass on this knowledge that you've invested in me. There's nothing wrong with my brain. And, maybe I can inspire some of these people that are coming, the next generation of baby divers as well. And so they say yes, but I've got to bounce, I've got to jump through all the hoops. I've got to pass the physical assessments, the mental assessments, the diving assessments. And I was like, no dramas, bring it on. I'd been prepping myself for 6 months to do that. And so every single hoop they put in front of me, I passed without any problems. So after that, they couldn't say no. So I went down, started teaching at the dive school, taught maintenance, taught scuba air, taught UBDR, underwater battle damage repair, and I was showing the kids how to underwater weld with one hand.
Oh, wow. How important is a purpose, to have a purpose to recover, to fully recover? So you had that as soon as you were told that you could go back to work, that you could get back into a dive suit. That almost felt like that purpose gave you the strength and gave you a meaning to get through this recovery as quick as possible. How important is having a purpose for recovery?
Yeah, man, having a purpose is everything. What are you doing it for if you don't have that purpose? I didn't even know that they were going to, if they were going to let me go back to work during that whole 7 months. I was just training my absolute butt off to prove to them, when they put those barriers up between me and my goal, that I could get over those barriers. And so those words, like in the final moments when I asked if I could go back to work and they agreed to let me go to the dive school after 7 months, you can't imagine the elation. Like every single painful minute of my life up until that point was totally worth it. And I was just so happy. I knew that if they gave me a chance, I could prove to them that I could be useful. So having that purpose, even if you don't know if you're going to achieve the end goal or end result, it doesn't matter. As long as you have that drive and purpose in there as the motivator. And honestly, most of the time my motivator was fear. It was the fear, like I said, that I was going to go back to that pointless, purposeless loser that didn't contribute to anything that I used to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. And one of my mates said one of the most important things that got me through a lot, he said, never feel bad about feeling bad. He said, feel bad. It's okay. Just don't let that ruin your whole week, your whole month, your whole year, or your whole life. Feel bad. Address the problem, look at the root causes, look at how you can better it, and then move on. Because, you can't live your whole life like that. It's a slippery slope.
So you get back into the training school after a couple of years, you're like, do you know what? I want to go and find out about these beautiful beasts that have changed my life. What made you want to go and...
Mate, it wasn't even that.
Get into that. Take me through
it. It was actually speaking first. So my two biggest fears in life were sharks and public speaking.
Public speaking is horrible. It's horrible.
Mate. So because I'd done a couple of episodes of 60 Minutes, my recovery was all over the Australian media. There was a lot of corporations and companies that wanted me to go and speak and talk to their people about how I did it. And there was absolutely no way. Like, I don't care. You couldn't pay me all the money in the world to go and do that. I remember when I was 19 and I was trying to find my way in Canberra, and I went and did an IT course at TAFE. And 6 months in, they made us talk in front of the class. I had this piece of paper. My hands were shaking. My face went red. My eyes started watering, and I quit the course the next day. That's how afraid of public speaking I was. And so I didn't want to do that. But then Cancer Camp for Kids called Canteen asked me to speak. And You can't say no to kids with cancer. God damn it.
Mate. Got you.
Yeah. And so I went along, I was shaking, and I'm just like, dude, you literally play with explosives underwater and jump out of planes. And so I went in there and did this little thing I had prepared, and I walked out of there on top of the bloody world. And I just thought, you know what, maybe I can do this, and maybe I should do this, because I made those kids laugh. I made them forget that they were sick, and maybe I could contribute to other people's lives as well. And so I got a speaking manager and started doing it. And all of a sudden, I'm making my 2 weeks Navy wage in 1 hour. And then I'm making my month's Navy wage in 1 hour. And it gets bigger and bigger. And for the first year, I think I knew the first sentence that I was going to say, and I knew the last sentence that I was going to say. And for the first year, I would come off stage and I would sit down and I would think to myself, I have no bloody idea what I just said. But they all clapped, so it couldn't have been shit. And so then, you know, I'm getting comfortable in front of the cameras, I'm getting comfortable in front of an audience, and then Shark Week comes along and asks me to do an interview for a show with them. And I just thought, yeah, sure, whatever. It's, you know, they were going to give me a couple of grand. And I thought, yeah, definitely. And then we're going into where I got attacked, into the same area, and they're waiting for the whoever it was to come and do the reenactment, and he didn't turn up. And so I just said, oh, I'll do it. And they all looked at me like, what the fuck? What? You'll do it? I was like, yeah, whatever. Bang on a wetsuit, jump in, I got my prosthetic leg on, and I'm in the same spot where I got attacked with the cameraman splashing around doing my own reenactment. And so I think they thought that was pretty cool. And then the next year, they offered me a co-hosting job. And so I was just like, oh, hell yeah. I get to go and travel around Australia and see great whites and go cage diving. And all I got to do is like say some stuff. Because I never blamed the shark, I think the media were curious about that. And so they asked me to give a comment whenever there was a negative shark interaction or a fatality or something. And I thought, oh, well, shit, I knew nothing. And so I thought, well, you know, if I'm going to do this, I want to give an educated opinion instead of just an opinion. And so I thought, well, I better start learning about these animals. And, you know, so what do? You get on the Google net, you start watching YouTube videos, you start reading things. And the more I read, the more I realized how little we had to fear from sharks and how much they had to fear from us. You know, comparatively speaking, and death by a shark attack, obviously I know is horrible, so I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, but comparatively speaking, 7 to 10 people a year in the whole world compared to 150 million sharks. And so who's the real monster here? And so I thought, you know what? It felt like a transfer of my service. You know, in the Army and the Navy, my job is to, aside from hunt and shoot people, is also to protect people, to serve. And so I saw this as a nice transfer of my service. You know, now, before I was standing up for people that couldn't stand up for themselves, and now I have the opportunity to speak up for an animal that doesn't have a voice. And I think one of the worst things you can do is have a voice, have a platform, and have knowledge and not utilize that. And so I felt like it was a call to service.
But now you're huge in this, say, the shark world. You've worked with some huge celebrities, Mike Tyson, Ronda Rousey, Will Smith. It's unfortunate you didn't have Will Smith down there on the day because he could have slapped the shark around the face. But,
that was what Mike Tyson was doing.
When you look at your life now and you think to yourself, wow, you know, because of this experience, and it is a life experience, and I see that you don't treat it as a traumatic experience, but this life experience has got you where you are today. You know, you're inspiring people. Like you said, you're putting smiles on people's faces. You know, you're taking them out of that moment, whether they're, you know, really, really ill or not in a good place. And then you find yourself traveling the world, which you are, you know, doing these shark experiences, your life experience, and also hanging out with Mike Tyson. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
I'm not going to lie. Out of the worst thing that has ever happened to me has come the greatest opportunity. And I'll always be grateful for the people that have helped me. You know, I didn't do it myself. I didn't give myself the opportunity to become a speaker. I didn't give myself the opportunity to become a regular host on Shark Week or, any of the other shows. I got to go to Africa with Damien Mander, another clearance diver, Special Forces sniper, and learn how to hunt poachers as well. So I'm very grateful. To the point now where I wouldn't change it. Would I like my hand and my leg back? Absolutely. But I wouldn't change it now because I don't know who that Paul is. I don't know what was laid in front of him in his period of time. Is he happy? Was he fulfilled? Did he get the jobs that he wanted? Did he, all that stuff. But I know who I am now. Like you said, man, I get paid to travel the world, have adventures. I get to stand on stage and make people laugh and cry and inspire them. I get to live in the US and hang out with, beyond the celebrities. They're cool as well. But the people that I work with the most are people that are passionate about the world. They're passionate about animals. They're passionate about stopping people from fearing a beautiful part of our natural ecosystem and trying to bring everyone together to help save it so that we don't continue to destroy it. Those are the heroes. Ron and Valerie Taylor, the first people to film great white sharks. I ran into Valerie Taylor at a shark rally one day and I was so nervous and she's a tiny little old lady now, and I walked up to her and I said, "Hello, Miss Taylor, how are you? My name's Paul de Gelder." And she looked up at me and she said, "I know who you are." And I was just, all my face blushed and I was so enamored with her. I literally get to walk in the footsteps of my heroes now, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure to talk and share this experience with one of my own. And the final thing, how important is it to take charge of the most powerful tool that the body possesses, the mind? And if anyone can leave us with a glimmer of motivation and inspiration, it's you. How important is it to take charge of your mind?
Yeah, your mind, your heart, your soul. Don't let one of them work alone. Let them work in unison together. Like, as with people, we're more powerful together. Your mind, your heart, your soul, they are the strongest, most resilient tools that you'll ever have. And you know what? Just don't do it for yourself either. Be the light that you want to see in other people, because we're all going through shit at some point. Sometimes we just need a chat, a coffee, a kind ear, a pat on the back, a well done. You might change that person's whole day, whole life, or whole outlook on life. So sometimes take the focus off yourself and go and do something for someone else without any expectation of reward. That is what will make you feel great.
Love that, mate. Listen, thanks so much for coming on Head Game. Absolutely phenomenal, inspirational, mate. A pleasure to meet you. And listen, we must catch up soon. A few beers.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, mate.
Paul de Gelder is a conservationist, author, speaker, and shark attack survivor. His latest book is Shark. Thank you so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. And leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm at Middleton. Catch you again